Welcome to the D Word by Peace Vigil. D stands for difference, a word that is often the cause for fear, divisions, and violence. In this series, we talk to people about their experiences with difference, how it impacted their lives, and what they think of it. If you like this discussion, please do remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. In today's episode, we'll talk about discrimination against people due to a piece of clothing related to their religion.
Hello everyone, my name is Shireen and I welcome you to the D Word by Peace Vigil. In this series, we explore the phenomenon of difference. It is an all-pervasive phenomenon. It exists everywhere, and yet many times it is too complex for us to understand. It can make us uncomfortable or fearful or angry. But does it have to be that way? Can we see difference through new perspectives? Let us hear the perspective of Kabir, our guest today. I recently met him through a social media post of his. As you might know, some government colleges in the province of Karnataka in India have banned the wearing of hijab or the head covering worn by some Muslim women. What this means is that if a female student or a female teacher covers her head, she cannot attend classes or even enter her educational institution. Against this background, I saw Kabir's post that I'm going to share with you. Let me also read it for you, as the D Word is also released as a podcast. And our podcast's name is Baobab, Redwood, and Neem. So let me read you Kabir's post. It has two photographs. There is a woman in hijab and there is Kabir as a child in a patka. And a patka is a head covering worn by young male children in the Sikh community. It is not like a turban, it is smaller. And this is what the post says: me in patka versus girl in hijab. Here's a picture of me in patka. That's how I went to school daily. Growing up in Lucknow, my patka never interfered in my studies or offended anyone. How come BJP government suddenly finding hijab in schools to be interfering and offending? So Kabir, a very warm welcome to the D Word.
Hi, Shireen. Thanks for having me over here.
Of course, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I want to know more about your post.
Okay. Well, as my post indicates, that I grew up in Lucknow, and I grew up in a Lucknow where, frankly, I never saw any communal disharmony or hatred. Maybe it was a different time. That was, a couple of decades back. And in our schools, we had girls wearing hijab. And frankly, I actually studied in a Arya Samaj, a right-wing school. And we never, ever had an issue with anyone disrespecting either patka or hijab, or frankly, any such issues coming in the media whatsoever. I did my high school from my school and then went on to do my graduation from a Shia degree college, which is a Muslim minority institution, and never saw any kind of discrimination or issues. In fact, we were quite proud as Lucknowis, even though we were from UP, and from time to time we would read issues from some parts in UP having communal disharmony or even riots once in a while. But we had never had any such issues in Lucknow. And basically, even if you look at the general media environment, movies from 80s, 90s, you would never see an atmosphere of hatred. So this atmosphere, which has started, coming up in last 5-7 years, has been quite disturbing to me. That is the reason I frankly don't like social media, and I certainly never imagined creating or writing any posts about it. But things are in such desperately bad situation that I thought something had to be done. Some stories have to be shared of how stupid we are becoming, how lower the discourse, the political discourse is going. And with this background, uh, I decided to just write this post to highlight the blatant hypocrisy which was shining in my face.
That was a good idea, Kabir, because as a peace educator, I can tell you that your personal stories are really the most powerful ones. We can give lectures, we can give people examples from around the world, but when we give our own personal stories to reflect an idea or to promote a position, that is the most powerful way to deliver a message. So your post was very well received. Our Peace Vigil volunteers were very happy to see that post. Once again, what Kabir said in his post, he put two pictures there. One was a lady in a hijab, which is a head covering, and then there was little Kabir as a child in a patka, and he said that if it's not a problem for me to wear a patka, how can it be a problem for a woman to wear a hijab? What would you say, Kabir, to people who have this argument that the hijab is a sign of enslavement of women and that changes must be made in society so that women don't cover their heads?
Well, I would say it's none of our business to decide anybody else's wardrobe or anybody else's dinner plate. It's really up to them. We can have our views, but personal liberty and freedom to choose are fundamental rights, basically, in any progressive society. In US, you would see women wearing hijab as the judges, as doctors, practicing every day. So I see no reason to interfere with that, choice that any woman may choose to have. You can see in India every day millions of women wearing chunari or pallu over their head as part of the customs that they value. So we have no business interfering with anybody's value system. I personally have, as you can see, I have personally chosen to remove my turban. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to go and force everybody else to make the same choice. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we have to allow the women to make their own choices, whether it's a bikini or hijab, whether it's jeans or ghungat. It's none of our business to interfere there.
Actually, you have put it so well that anybody needing an explanation on that should be quite clear, because it really honestly is not anyone's business, but the person who wants to or doesn't want to wear a hijab. And you've also mentioned food in this. And we have noticed that in the last many years, I would say about 10 years, last 10 years, there's a lot of violence being committed in the name of food. What people should be eating, what people should be keeping in their own refrigerators inside their homes, whether they have the right to eat something or not is being decided by a bunch of hooligans, and those bunch of hooligans are then actually supported by the state, whether through statements or through actions. So we have seen, for instance, that many people are not arrested for being part of lynch mobs or for instigating violence in the name of religion when it comes to food. And now, of course, we are talking of a dress code, whether this is right or not right for a woman to wear. So tell me, Kabir, your decision to not wear a pagdi, did it come with some backlash from people you knew?
Yes, absolutely it did. I think I was the first one in my family to make that choice. And yes, as you could imagine, elders in the family were quite disturbed about the decision. They were disturbed by my decision. They tried convincing me not to go ahead with it. but I was quite clear about why I was doing it, and I had good reasons about it. I had a long discussion with my grandfather about it, and finally they were on board, and they were quite convinced about it. They knew that it was not a reaction to anything; it was coming from a place where I had considered everything, thought over it, and I knew what I wanted to do. I think it's very important that we are clear about our decisions, and then we are able to explain it to our family, and mostly they do understand.
True, and I think that also applies to women wearing or not wearing a head covering, because they have taken the decision, and we must respect that decision. If tomorrow they don't want to wear a hijab, today they are wearing it, that's also totally fine. If they don't wear a hijab today and tomorrow they want to wear it, that's totally fine as well. I think it's all a question of human agency, right? Agency to the individual, agency to a community, agency to a family, in terms of what they want to wear or eat or so on. Which brings me to the question of a dress code. What if the court says that, look, nobody can cover their head no matter what, nobody can wear, say, long sleeves? What do you think of that? Do you think the state should be making such decisions? Because then it will be uniform for everyone, it will be the same for everyone.
I think the idea of dress and uniform is quite regressive. And if you look at progressive education systems, progressive societies, if you look at schools in Europe and US and other progressive societies, you would see that they are realizing it is much better to allow individual to express individuality. The whole idea of uniform is treating children as if they are part of an army, and they all have to behave in just listen to the orders, not use their critical thinkings, and just follow the orders. So in general, I guess I'm going to answer this in a couple of different ways. In general, uniform in itself is a regressive idea. However, even if some schools do choose to have uniforms, uh, the hijab or patka are anyway our fundamental rights. So no rules of schools, whether related to uniform or anything else, can trample on our fundamental rights, basically, which are guaranteed by our constitution. So it is in fact illegal, right? So even if there is a uniform, it has to accommodate at least the items of personal faith. It cannot deny or override them.
So what you're saying is that even if there is a uniform and a Sikh child wants to wear a patka, his family wants him to wear a patka, he should be allowed to. If a girl wants
Absolutely.
to cover her head, that is her right. Okay. Kabir, I would like to know a little bit about your own personal background, your family background. I do understand that your family is Sikh. I also want to know how you have absorbed these ideas of a secular India, where you're willing to defend the rights of people who are othered. So we are always seeing divisions created in society. So what is it that prompts you to stand up for the rights of another community?
I guess I'll have to start with giving credit to my grandfather. He was himself an immigrant. He was part of the 1947 partition. He was a big, rich landlord from the Pakistani side of Punjab, close to Rawalpindi, and he had to migrate to India, to Lucknow, leaving pretty much all his possessions. So he was also the victim of Islamic fundamentalists, uh, uh, Islamic fanatics, so to speak, during the time of partition. And then he came to India and had to start from the scratch. He was an upright man, a man with very strong character, I would say, and very strong values, who never compromised on his values. And over the years, he built his own life from scratch, living with within this new culture, so to speak, moving from Punjab to UP. He faced different kind of issues. He faced judgments, which every immigrant, every migrant faces from the local communities. In 84, he experienced very violent riots against Sikhs, against our community. Many of my uncles were directly affected. Their shops were burned. Some of our relatives were burnt alive to death. So he experienced that. I was quite young, of course. But I never heard a single communal statement coming out of his lips. Anytime I had discussions about him growing up with him on these matters, he was quite clear that no community is violent, no community must be judged. There are violent people in all communities, and he preferred to see them as fools rather than as evil beings, even the ones who were committing violence. And he was quite clear that such uh, fools exist in all religions, including Sikhs, including Hindus, including Muslims. So I guess that was the start of my secular education. And as I grew up, like I said, I started my schooling in Arya Samaj. I did my college in a Muslim university, and later I went to US. So I got to meet. In fact, my boss in US was a very sincere Christian, right? Who had 8 children because he would not even do family planning. So you could say that he was extreme in certain ways. So I was exposed to all these different facets, and I found that there is something common in the human nature, in the goodness of human nature and in the foolishness of human nature across all religions and cultures and countries. I guess that helped.
So not only is the foolishness common, but also the goodness is common in all communities and in all people, actually, because even in an individual there are good sides and not so good sides, and so on. When you were growing up, you said that you attended sort of a right-wing school, you said, as a child, and then later on university you went to a Shia college in Lucknow. Tell me, did you have friends from different communities growing up?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. From childhood itself, I did. And I don't think in my house I ever noticed the difference, or when I was visiting their houses, I ever noticed any difference in our interactions. We would eat together, we would share notes. I had Brahmin friends. Later, when I was in Shia college, I had several Muslim friends. Would go to old Lucknow to their houses, and the Lucknowi culture, the Nawabi culture, I experienced it firsthand. It was so beautiful. So I always felt that this diversity is such a beautiful thing, and it enriches our lives. And I'm not trying to be poetic. I am trying to be very practical and frank here. I really think different ways of living and different perspectives. If you are exposed to different perspectives, you evolve faster as a human being, is what I feel. So
What a beautiful
diversity
thing.
is not something, yeah, I mean, diversity is not something to be is a problem to be dealt with. It is something that we need to encourage if we want to evolve as a society.
So it actually needs to be cherished rather than feared,
Yes.
or yes. It's a great way of looking at difference, because diversity is nothing but difference. We are all different. And I am also curious to know that attending a school that leaned towards a right-wing philosophy, were there many Muslim students in the student community?
There were a few, but not too many. I guess there might be a certain skepticism in parents. Like I doubt many Hindu parents send their children to madrasa, but there were a few Muslim students. In fact, one of my friend Chand Basha, he studied in Arya Samaji school and he topped the school in his high school. And later, when his brother was appearing for high school 2 years later, he was the one who topped this Arya Samaji school, right? So it just shows that, not only can children across communities used to attend and still attend, hopefully, uh, institutions of from different religious background, but they thrive there as well.
This is interesting because in recent years, educational institutions have become places where kids do not feel comfortable if they are different. So I guess in those days, just like when I was growing up in India, things were not so black and white. So, you may have an institution that yes, leans towards the right wing, but there were still spaces within that institution that accommodated difference. Maybe they were not as nice as, say, a secular institution or an institution being run by, say, missionaries. I went to a school run by missionaries and we didn't experience any of the right-wing stuff at all. It was quite an equal system. But what I'm trying to say is that, even though communal ideas have existed in India for a long time, there were still spaces within those communal spaces where you were at least allowed to exist and, maybe thrive, as you are saying. Whereas times have changed completely where people won't even be allowed into an institution just because they're different.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I'm just remembering one little example. In 90s, there was this comedy movie with Amir Khan and Salman Khan, and they were dressed up like Ram and Bharat, and they were doing some parody. I could just, if that was happening today, I think there would be riots. People would be going to burn their houses because they were having fun dressed up as Shri Ram and Shri Bharat. And in 90s, nobody even blinked an eye. We were not even aware of the community or religion of the actors. So we have fallen down. We have come down in our political discourse in terms of communal harmony, and this secular. I should say more than ideas, the secular genes, the genetics, the way we were growing up. I think children nowadays are taught, unfortunately, to notice the surnames. We grew up in an India where we were not, I was frankly never made aware of surnames or community of people by my family. And I think most of my friends were neither. So when we made friendships, it was because of personality of another boy or what he liked or what she didn't like. It was never about their surnames. And I frankly used to imagine that things will get better and better with every passing decade, But like we have seen examples of Iran or Afghanistan, which were quite progressive societies and now turned fanatic. We must learn from that and make sure that doesn't happen here.
So, what do you think are the reasons that have made the situation so bad?
I can only speculate. I certainly will not answer this question as someone, as a know-all kind of a person. But I think it might have to do with, the unhappiness in people. So sometimes we do not realize how closely the ideas of fascism and crony capitalism and the class system and the caste disparities in society. Basically, when there are extreme inequalities in society, when one section grows and another doesn't, people just become unhappy. And such unhappy, angry people are easy to be misled. Politicians are able to make them believe that only if they hate a particular community or caste, that the problem should be solved. That's exactly what happened in Iran. If you read the history, the Islamic fundamentalists were able to use this anger of inequality in people and tell them that if only we become Islamic Republic, if only we kick out the liberals and progressives from society, that there will be more equality and life will become better. And people just, I guess, uh, they they don't use their critical thinking. They don't realize that they are being manipulated and used. And that's exactly what I believe is going on.
It's a very good explanation, because as we know in peace education, when we study peace, is that often this idea of superiority is used as a way to gain some happiness. So, I am unhappy, and the only way I'm going to feel happy is by making you feel terrible about yourself, and basically telling you that, oh, you are inferior and I'm superior, whether it comes to my hygiene habits, or my food, or my clothing, or my history. So, referring to a golden past and so on. So that's a very good explanation. And I think you're linking it with economics also, is something that we need to delve deeper. Would you say that from 90s onwards, especially with the economy changing, the structure of the economy, the nature of the economy changing, has something to do with how things became so bad?
Uh, it's possible because, before 90s, if you see, people did not see as much disparity. It is ironic because you can say in generally speaking, everybody was poor. Everybody was lower middle class. So nobody was really jealous of others. People thought it was a general problem. But starting 90s, when there were more opportunities, suddenly these differences became glaring. Before 90s, there were just two or three two-wheeler brands to choose from. There were two or three cars to choose from. Very few people had them. There weren't too many choices. There were no malls. If you had more than certain amount of money, you didn't know what to do with it. Everybody would cook at home. Everybody would eat more or less same things. But now suddenly, when we opened up to or globalized our economy, there were more opportunities, but also there were so many choices. And suddenly, these differences became quite glaring. You could see your neighbor driving, a BMW or a Japanese car, and suddenly you felt poorer. And so there have always been differences in our society, unfortunately. Whether you look at caste, whether you look at communities, certain communities and castes have done far better than certain others. And there have been historical reasons for that. And those differences, because they were more prepared, the upper caste, the certain classes were more prepared to take advantage of this open economy, they started thriving and jumping ahead. And that created more anger in general society. So you are right. The irony is that as we became richer, the differences became more apparent.
But the irony in all this also is that not only is the class that benefited from that change in the economic system supporting the communal politics, but also the have-nots, people who are not benefiting from the system, even they are supporting communal politics. And I think it is because of the first point we discussed, is that, that sadness, that frustration that's in society leads you to be manipulated. It lets you be manipulated. Now, Kabir, coming back to your post, it is certainly a way by which one can reach minds and hearts, even though, it's something small, it's something short, but it stays in your mind. And I think the best that we can do as people who support peace, who want to promote peace, is to plant that seed of thought, so that people actually think, okay, what did this post just say? Yeah, that's a point. Should I think about it more? So, Kabir, my question to you is, what are the things that you think should be done, considering that we don't have a lot of resources at our disposal?
I feel what you guys are doing is amazing. You and people around you in Peace Vigil and such initiatives, you are encouraging such voices. Usually what we have seen is that the extremists, either left-wing extremists or right-wing extremists, are quite vocal. People who want to solve things by violence, who want to speak loudly, scream loudly, they have overtaken the discourse. They have overtaken the dialogue spaces, online and offline, in our society. I feel there is a need that moderates, thoughtful people, people who talk of oneness, who believe in ideas of peace and equal rights, equity in society, must also share their ideas, must also come out. A lot of times I've heard from such people in my family, around me, my friends, that there's no point. And there are so many of them. There are WhatsApp groups where fanatics are sending messages every day. I keep encouraging my friends to please respond. You do not have to argue. You don't have to stoop down to their levels, but say your word. It matters. Even if you don't win an argument, it matters. I really respect the journalist Ravish Kumar in NDTV. He does beautiful work. So he said something. He said, sometimes you don't fight a war to win. Sometimes a war has to be fought just to show that somebody was there. Okay, so you do your bit, so at least you can look in your own eyes and uh, age peacefully or die peacefully in the end, saying that you did what you could. So we don't have to be discouraged by what we are achieving immediately or how it will help. We should do our bit, because it's almost like morally and ethically required of us to do that.
True. And when we look back, or our future generations look back, it will be quite clear that those who remained silent actually aided the violence and the hatred that was being spread, because silence in itself is a position, right? We take it deliberately. We say, okay, I'm going to be silent. And talking of Ravish Kumar, we have a great interview, actually 2-part interview with him on our series Baobab, Redwood and Neem, where he spoke in Hindi about his thoughts on what's happening in India. And that's a very powerful interview. So I encourage our viewers and listeners to go and check that out. The link is given in the description. So you can look below in the description and go to the links where you can hear Ravish Kumar, the celebrated journalist of India. And also, Kabir, I thank you very much that you appreciate our work. Our aim certainly is to make bridges and bonds and not add to the already existing hate and violence that is out there, which means not only saying that hate and violence is wrong, but also creating alternatives, providing solutions, providing tools by which we fight hate. So what you said, especially about responding to abuse online, I think it is so very important. So in our workshops, we always say, never let an abuse go unopposed. It's very important to oppose it. You don't have to carry on that conversation. But if somebody says something bad, you must at least make a point that, okay, I don't agree with this and this is wrong. So, that's very important, to register your opposition to something that is wrong.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that.
Kabir, are there any last words you'd like to offer to our viewers and listeners in terms of what you think they can do to make the situation better? You are in India right now, and you know that elections are happening, and many people are not very hopeful, but some people are hopeful that things will change. What can the diaspora do, you think, outside India? And also, what can people in India do, in your opinion, to make the situation better?
Okay. I would say that, I would just give an example of a candle in a dark room. Imagine there is a dark room which has been closed. All the windows are completely closed and door is closed for 200 years, for example. And you enter that room and light just one candle. It doesn't take even a minute or 30 seconds for light to come in the room. The 200 years of darkness can go away immediately. So every bit you do does matter. So I would encourage that please do not think that you are sharing something on Facebook and you are getting only 3 likes, for example, or one share. Do your bit. Like I said, wars are not fought only for the results, but to show that somebody was there standing up for the right side. So I would like that you share your views, whether it's a personal conversation, a simple WhatsApp group, or if you're on Facebook. If you have money to spare, then support such causes like Peace Vigil, for example, and such initiatives around you. If you can vote, definitely exercise that option. The idea that how would one person's view count, right? For example, look at my own example. I am not a good orator. I'm not a good writer at all. You'd be surprised. I'm from an IT background. I have absolutely no education in political matters or social issues. When I started writing my posts on Facebook, there would be 0 likes or shares for I think months and years together. And suddenly, some of my posts I see nowadays on these matters are shared by thousands of people. In fact, one of my posts, funnily enough, was shared by a right-wing icon, Subramaniam Swamy, who has like 10 million followers, and by Prashant Bhushan at the same time, who is a left-wing icon. And also another post was shared by a Kargil war hero, who was a right-wing icon. So suddenly these words are going to people, are reaching people through them, if not directly through me. These ideas. So you never know how your ideas, where would they end up. Just do your little bit, just share your, give your few minutes, whether it's talking to someone or sharing them on Facebook or WhatsApp, it does matter.
Kabir, it was a real pleasure to talk to you, somebody who believes that change can happen and that it should happen. The lessons that I have learned from you are that in our personal lives, we have to be a good example of what we believe in. So it's not just talk, but we actually in our own lives live the values that we are talking about. We make friends with other communities. We don't judge what their cultural or food or their clothing choices are, because that's really up to them. So, that's very important in our own personal lives. And the second is that spread those ideas to others as much as you can, whether it is a media post or by supporting. If you have more resources and time, you can support organizations that are doing it, or maybe form a group of your own friends or like-minded individuals who make a difference in society. So thank you so much, Kabir. I hope that many people will hear this interview and learn from you, because after all, peace needs all of us.
Thank you so much. And I too appreciate the opportunity and the beautiful way, the way you summarize things, and a very humble way you are serving the society is really touching and inspiring. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to The D Word, a show about differences. Peace Vigil is an organization dedicated to peace education. You can find more of our resources at peacevigil.net. Today's host was our co-director, Shireen, who spoke with Kabir. Please do remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. With that, I'm Samir Dosani reminding you that peace needs all of us.